Well, hello everyone. Is this picking up? Hello. Can you all hear me through the microphone? I don't know why. What? Huh. It is on. Yeah, thanks, David. I know, I can't figure it. I don't know how to turn this on. Do you? No. It doesn't have it's not one that's normally in here. Well, you're not doing a great job of turning the other one on. No, I want you to stay in here and be a body. Well, I don't know if people online on live stream or watching the recording later can hear me. The mic does say it's on, so hopefully you can hear. I'll be brief because I want to hand it over quickly to our presenter. Welcome to the second topic of, I love that I'm looking around and all these people I tapped in the courtyard are here. See, evangelism works. We have to spread the word. But this is the second topic of our series that's happening throughout the program year at different points called Vocation of Faith, are accepting God's call to. And we're having, if those of you who were here in the first 2 weeks in September, we heard from Parishioner Todd Bolden, who kind of introduced us to the idea of, or reintroduced us for most of us to the idea of calling and vocation, and talked about our work. And now we have Parishioner Andrew Westover, who will do, as part of his presentation, more of an introduction to who he is. But the super cool thing about him is that, one of the many, is that he works at the High Museum of Art. And so his topic for this week and for next week is accepting God's call to see beauty. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it right over to him so that we can get started. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for being here. I realize there are a lot of other options of things you could be doing with your time right now, so I appreciate you stopping in. Also, if this gets to be obnoxious, just tell me and we can turn it off. Just kidding. You cannot turn it off. All right. Well, I will allow it to be a little further from my face, perhaps, and see if that helps. All right. Let's see. I do. You know what? I am gonna, with apologies to people on the internet, I am gonna turn it off so people in the room. How we experience the world. So many microphones. It's kind of incredible. And when she invited me to do this talk, she said, this isn't necessarily an academic lecture. This isn't supposed to be something that's just browbeating with information. This is supposed to be an opportunity for you to share a bit about whatever brought you to this place that might, in fact, be of interest to others. So the next slide, if we could, thank you. I'm going to share a little bit about my own story. I promise I will not wax too long. But I'd like to give you a bit of a sense of where I'm coming from when I talk about this. I grew up, like I imagine at least some of you did, in the Deep South. For me, it was East Tennessee, outside of Knoxville. For Northerners, I tell them it's Dolly Parton's Hills. And in that space, I would argue that for me, the first place I recognized beauty was in the world around me. It was in the mountains. It was in the rivers. It was also in a sense that that was a place where I didn't need to be something other than what I was. I could be in nature, and that worked. And then, as I was growing up, I got involved in all kinds of things. One of them being from a young age, I sang. In case you hear a little bit of an odd resonance, that was instructed for many years. And the first time I really remember experiencing something beautiful was in a choir, and we were singing this song. Some of you may know Samuel Barber's Agnus Dei Adagio for strings. When it's transposed for voices, it does a couple of really particular things. One of them is that the dynamics go from pianissimo, so like the very quietest you possibly can. And again, I was a child at the time, trying to be as quiet as humanly possible. And then it ramps all the way up to fortissimo, so beyond the loudest, truly, that you can. So imagine, if you will, for a second, a group of, this time it was middle and high schoolers, about 120 of us, so not tiny, functionally screaming our heads off on our notes. And there was this felt experience of, for me, this sense of something that was truly greater than myself. And I'd heard about the sublime, I'd heard about spiritual things, but it wasn't really until that moment that I felt it in a way that felt not just other than me, but something that could be connected to my body and to the people around me. And that sort of launched a curiosity that hasn't stopped. So since then, I have been really interested in the arts broadly. I ended up studying music, theater, dance, and visual art just because I'm a glutton for it. And now at the museum, a lot of my work is around connecting people with works of visual art and thinking about how works of art can help us ask questions. And I think that's an important part of beauty too. I think if beauty is something that is sterile or that exists only in a constrained space, I'd often question whether or not that is beauty, or if in fact that's something that's nice or pleasant. I think that beauty offers a bit more complexity. So if we could go to the, oh, I forgot the quote, gracious. I love, if you haven't yet and you're bored and have time, this individual is one of the greatest Christian writers on aesthetics, in my opinion. And I'll turn around and try to keep the microphone with me. So this quote, I'll simply read it. Before the beautiful, no, not really before, but within the beautiful, the whole person quivers. He not only finds the beautiful moving, rather, he experiences himself as being moved and possessed by it. If we can ignore the gendered pronouns. What I like about this too is it points to the sense that beauty is deeply experiential. And it's also something that has the capacity and possibility to transform. So we'll go 2 slides ahead because I forgot that there's this little slide that says My Call to Beauty, which we've talked about already. And now, with this section, and I'm going to actually move over to the side so I can see these notes on the screen. Jenny asked me to think about 2 questions. The first, how does beauty help us be the people God intends us to be for our own good? Beauty also is a tricky word. There are many people who would say, beauty, you mean like the beauty aisle? You mean like makeup? Beauty, you mean like that thing that's beautiful, like my grandmother said was beautiful, and then I showed up in a different way and she said that wasn't beautiful? You mean beauty like something you have to be taught? expertise. You have to have the perfect brush stroke. You have to have the exact correct line. While those are elements of things that can be beautiful, I would ask that you think about beauty a bit more expansively. So here, and we'll go to the next slide, I'd like you to think about this inner and outer beauty as it relates to, I'll use our Christian tradition. Inner beauty in our tradition comes through three capacities. One would be spiritual qualities. And this is something that I love when people say, well, how do you know something is good or beautiful? The fruits of the Spirit often provide a helpful way forward. If we were with younger people, I'd invite someone to rattle them off. I won't force such upon you, but with the... oh, great. Would someone like... Amazing. Look at how quickly that came out. Yeah, there we go. So love, joy, peace, kindness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. I might have missed one or two. I'm sorry if I did. But with the fruits of the Spirit, they provide also signposts, which are helpful when we're trying to think about, is beauty just anything that feels nice? Is beauty anything that feels good? And I would argue no. There are lots of things that are pleasurable, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're beautiful. So this second one helps us a bit in this direction too. How do we see evidence of beauty in our inner lives? That it's a life lived with faithfulness, with love for God, with love for the neighbor. When I'm thinking about these things, sometimes I like to think of people who for me have been mentors or people who have shown me what it is to live a beautiful life. Very rarely are they famous. Fame, I think, is often an inverse relationship with beauty. And when people demonstrate these sorts of things, I find that that sort of beauty can be the unheralded, unsung, quiet beauty that pulls us towards a more Christian, realized form of what it is to live with beauty. Which brings me to this third point, that the divine image is reflected in us. This is something that I think we as Episcopals have a lot to hold on to. I grew up in a different tradition, and in that particular tradition, there was a sense that we were constantly trying to slough off the world so that we could get closer to the divine and find beauty. And one flip of that I found really helpful is to think about all living things are created in the image of the divine. And in that, we have a capacity towards beauty because it is embedded within us as God's creation. And that helps not only feed the Spirit, but helps us love God more fully because that's embedded in who we are. The next slide, please. Then to extend that outward, I think it's important to engage this word superficiality. I've been kind of lecturing because we have the microphone situation, but I'm usually a bit more back and forth. Anyone want to toss at me, what would you say superficiality might be? How do we know what superficiality is? Conversation that has no meaning, just kind of skimming the surface. Pleasantries. What else is superficial?
A changing definition. So it's like something, if the definition has been defined by society, but it used to be something different.
Interesting.
Society has defined something and it keeps changing based on where we are currently.
So talking about if there's a definition of something and whoever's around it may think that, tell me if I'm paraphrasing incorrectly, may think that that definition is no longer convenient, and they change the definition to match their desires. That could be an example of a superficial engagement with whatever that thing is. Sure. Yes.
I think of it like a facade. You know, with these set, you see a building, you think it's a building, but it's just a tall front of a building.
Yeah. That the facade of a space is not the fulsomeness of it. It's just that surface. It's just that image or representation, and maybe not the full thing. Thank you.
I'm kind of a snob, I guess, but I tend to think of like mass production or kitsch. Isn't that superficiality?
So mass production or kitsch as a form of superficiality, when there's, and maybe I'll put a finer point on this, that perhaps asking if there is something that's done with regularity, maybe outside of human intervention or with minimal human intervention, that can feel a bit superficial. Or for consumption. Yeah, you were going to add?
To market, like they're trying to sell the product. Here's your image of beauty, which changes based on what they want to sell.
Yes, the relationship between the market or purchasing, capitalism, and what is superficial. Yeah, I see one more.
I like the way you frame that too, because I think there's also something that feels very different that when it's made by hand versus like it's I turned a machine on in the factory and I'm on autopilot. There's like a lack of engagement.
Yeah, that creation, there's a relationship between creation and intent. And the way that we can see that intent, sometimes it's by the nature of the hand that is creating. So here I've got a couple of things that I think outer beauty through and beyond superficiality. I want to be careful that I don't say superficiality is categorically wrong. Like to take your beautiful first example of sometimes I need to have pleasantries to move through the world and not, for example, share my current biggest problem with each person I meet. And if I only stay at pleasantries, like you say, we're just hovering. So these are some elements that allow us to think through and beyond superficiality. Worship itself. And each of these can be superficial, right? I imagine there has been a time, I won't ask you to raise hands, where at some point in your life, worship might not have been something that invigorated your entire soul, body, and spirit. And it was a little on the surface. But then the inverse, when it does fully land, when you are fully part of it, then that connection, I would argue, is beautiful in the connection of the beauty that is within you and the beauty of the divine. Art, architecture, that feeling of walking into a space. And sometimes this gets categorized as awe, A-W-E. And I think that too can be a hallmark or indicator of beauty or a beautiful experience. Nature, similarly. And harmony and wholeness. And I almost didn't put this on because sometimes people can go down rabbit trails here. But I think that it's helpful, and you don't always have to pull from Aquinas to get here, that recognizing beauty in clarity and balance, I think also can help us think toward what our relationship is with the divine and how the divine shows up. That's not saying that chaos is necessarily evil. I mean, Jesus was flipping the tables in the temple, and that wasn't necessarily orderly, but it pointed to a divine order. And that's an important aspect to hold. The next slide. And I'm going to time check. Okay, good. We're doing all right. How then does beauty help us be closer to God? And this all sounds a little funny, I'll say, coming from me too. I am not a pastor or priest or rector. My background is in, like I said, the arts. I did do a little side trip to seminary, but it was mostly to do self-work. It was not really with any sense of how others might engage. And so it's interesting for me to be asked these questions and to transpose what I know of creativity or curiosity or beauty and think very explicitly about our relationship with the divine. So I've kind of charted this into two directions. Beauty as a reflection of God, which we've talked about a bit already, and beauty and human experience. So this next slide, as we think about beauty as a reflection of God, that again, God the Creator as the source of beauty, and particularly the love and harmony within the Trinity. I don't know if you're like me. Trinity, sometimes I'm like, oh, what? How do I hold this? I get it. I can't. It's beyond my capabilities as a singular human. And when I wrestle with it, one of the things that I find so compelling is that it's three discrete parts that are also a unified whole. And that's where that, for me, sense of harmony really starts to make sense. If you've heard a performance where singers or instrumentalists are beautifully harmonizing, especially if it's improvisational, shout out to the 5 p.m. service with some jazz, that form of harmony to me is a way of seeing a different understanding of beauty. You know, before we were talking about like the perfect line, the ability to draw with great precision. That is beautiful. And there was something amazing that happened when the Impressionists broke up the line. And I think that that can be harmonious with how we see the world, to see the impression of light and not the exact replication. And then truth, goodness, and beauty, if any of you happen to have a little Jesuit education in you, that these are qualities that are inherent in all beings, plural, that also lead us back to God. If all of this sounds a little bit circular, it is. And I think that's part of what is beautiful about it. That when we're asking what beauty is, it becomes reinforcing as it circles around. The divine creates, and we have the capacity to create. The divine radiates, and we have capacity to reflect back what is radiated toward and through us, and in this engage in something beautiful. The next slide, and I promise we're almost done with these silly slides, beauty in the human experience. This first one can be tricky, but that beauty isn't about perfection. And this can be hard if you're going through something hard and someone says, just look for the beautiful. And you're like, I would love for you to not. And beauty can include suffering and pain and imperfection. That can is doing a lot of heavy lifting, I'm aware. And these can be sacrificial acts that can reveal God's glory. I think it's important to hold that tension. I'm not saying that everything bad is God's gift to you. I'm saying that there is power and possibility in considering where we find beauty, and that sometimes it's not where we want to find it. Sacred moments. This is a little bit like, if any of you remember, there was a moment where Precious Moments figurines were a thing. Little ceramic cutesy dolls. Yes. Precisely. A lot going on. It can be diminished, right? The sense of, oh, that nice thing, that cute moment. I'm so glad we shared that. Maybe that's what I'm talking about. But really what I'm trying to get at is not something that, you pat the child and say, now go on and play. It's something where, like Barbara Brown Taylor talks about 3 miracles on the way to the mailbox every day. This sense that even the riot of a flower can be something that attunes us to beauty beyond. And this last bit, I don't know how many of you may have spent time out in Navajo land or elsewhere. There are many versions of this, but hoso, walking in beauty, is a particular practice, and there are lots of practices like this across the Episcopal tradition, where it asks us to think about emphasizing balance, harmony, and restoring beauty as a way of living. I like to think of this too as how we hold conflict, and that conflict doesn't have to be conflict bad, resolution good, but it can be conflict that I choose to engage or conflict that I avoid. And if I choose to engage it, if I have the capacity and the structures and the whatever, that I can try to see where opportunities for beauty are within that conflict. Again, don't hear me saying, be the most perfect saint in the entire world from now on, but rather, what are the places that we overlook in our day-to-day life as an opportunity to seek or find beauty? I mean, for me in my workplace, none of you work there, and I'll assume that they probably won't watch this. There are some people who are tough. There are some people that I need to work with and some that I'm supposed to lead, and it is difficult for me sometimes to see beauty in them. It's really easy for me to see ways that they've fallen short and that I need to tell them. And when I come back to something like the beauty way, it's like, oh, Andrew, wow. There you went again, underscoring the ugly and not trying to seek anything that resembled beauty. I'll also say beauty often gets pigeonholed. We've talked about it in a couple ways so far, but there are a few more that I want to hit before we leave this. One, beauty gets pigeonholed as appearance, and it isn't always. Some of the most beautiful people I know are folks who probably would not be stopped on the street by Vogue, right? Beauty often can get pigeonholed also as gendered. Beauty is a concern of women. Beauty is a concern of the femfolk. And it's not something that all of us should be concerned with. And I fundamentally disagree with this. Not just because I like and care about it, but because I think the divine has given us a gift, and for us to deprioritize one of the gifts God has given us because it seems a little feminine feels ugly. The next slide, please. So I'm going to give us a moment to discuss. And what I'd like you to do, it looks like almost everyone is seated next to someone. Yeah, and if you need to go, feel free. I know people have things they have to do. But I'd like you to quickly turn for 1 second to a person near you. Did any of this raise a question for you? Talk it through with your partner, and then in about 2 minutes, we'll come back and share the